Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Siritip from Thailand. I'm a Sustainable Design Director at Green where we believe sustainable architecture can be a balance between enhancing the people's well-being while also reducing negative impacts to the environment. And I wanted to share, this is a page out of my son's favorite picture book called Outside In. He was under the lockdown, and the author of this book also wrote this book under her lockdown as well. This book talks about how we were once a part of nature and connected to nature, but then something happened, and nature is trying to remind us that it's there by this, also this, and this, and even with this. And this book has won many awards last year because I think people can relate to that, because it is our innate human nature that we long to be connected to nature. So I'm very happy that I will get to talk about this topic today, biophilic design, revived by reconnecting with nature. What exactly is biophilic design? Well, we know that bio is life and philic is love. So it is the love of life, the love of living things and nature. But how do you define nature in this sense? When I look it up in Pinterest and I type biophilic design, this is the results that I get. And you can see that all these photos, they share some similarities, and those are some trees or greeneries. Stephen Keller has written a book, and he defines 3 principles of biophilic design. And the first one is that you could provide people with direct experience of nature. And it's not only just about trees or plants, but it also includes light, air, water, and even fire. Or you can also provide them with indirect experience of nature. And that could be using natural materials, natural colors, textures, form, even structures. Images of nature or simulated nature is also the indirect experience, and biomimicry falls here as well. And thirdly, experience of space and place. This is when you design your space or sequence of space that has an impact on people in similar ways that nature does. For example, providing them with design that gives prospect and refuge, some level of complexity, providing transitional space, or some wayfinding in our design. And it also relates to cultural and ecological attachment to place. Well, the benefits of biophilic design, I'm sure we all agree, and intuitively, we know that biophilic design is good for us as humans. But a significant body of research has suggested that nature can benefit our physical, mental, and might even affect us spiritually as well. For example, there are research that talks about people who have access to nature, getting close to nature, are less stressful than those who don't. Even a short walk in nature compared to a walk in an urban area reduce different level of stress. Or patient in hospital recover better with windows with view outside compared to those who don't. Students who are provided with daylight in their classrooms has a better performance than those who don't. And so are staffs in office, which is well daylit. And with all these benefits, we do know that it helps us with our health and well-being. But sometimes it can be overwhelming with all these points that we need to consider. So to me, when I look at biophilic design, I look back at how nature is trying to connect with us, and that is through our 5 senses. We could try to revive the multisensory connection to Mother Nature. And our 5 senses don't work separately. We sense everything all at the same time, And all these senses send a signal to our brain and it declares or defines that whether we like it or not, whether we are happy or not. And for me, for my case, it began during the first day or the first time I visited the site. This site is a site for kindergarten. It is located in the middle of Bangkok and next to the road. The site is a narrow strip of land. And the moment we step from the road, hot, scorching sun, really terribly hot, into this presence of big existing trees that are there, it evokes all our five senses. And we felt that we are connected to nature with our sight, what we see, the shades and shadow patterns that falling onto our skin and onto the surrounding environment. What we hear, we started to hear some rustling leaves, the sound of some tiny creatures. We can feel the wind through our skin, and also we feel cooler than when we were outside. And at that moment, we think that we would like the children to learn and play by experiencing similar things that we had that day. So we decided to keep all the trees there. So we lock the tree location, the type, and we try to not disturb them by sweeping the section of school building and learning spaces underneath the tree. And we punch some holes in between to allow for the wind, because the wind is coming from strange direction. It's coming from the narrow back end towards the front end. And we were glad to see that the children are now happily running around under the tree shades, and they are learning in that semi-indoor outdoor space connected with the trees with all their five senses. And they even had a different viewpoint from the second floor where they have different relationship to the trees. But not all sites are like this. Maybe this is the majority of the cases that we work with, is that the site could be next to the large road, lots of traffic, pollution, sound, unwanted noise. And this is the case for another office building close to Bangkok that we work with. It is an office for medical supplies, which all the programs almost fill up the site because there is also a warehouse at the back. And we felt that there are no nature outside. So maybe we could provide them with a tiny portion of nature that can interact with people. So we achieved that by dividing the main three functions, the reception, the showroom, and the office, out. And we insert narrow, tiny strips of nature and some pocket natural space in between. This helps them to have the sight aspect of the trees and greeneries that also help to filter the pollution from outside. We also have the hanging greens around here as well. We put some small reflecting pond, and with this sound of the water feature, it helps to buffer the sound from the traffic outside. Natural breezes are coming from that direction into the building. And by means of separating all these masses, we're able to locate the main circulation as a semi-indoor outdoor transitional space. So when staffs are walking around the building, they're walking underneath a skylit roof that protects them from the rain, but still well daylit and also naturally ventilated. And we hope that by working this environment, it can help them, it can enhance their well-being in an office building. And on this second floor, there are some trees coming up as well. And you can see that it is well daylit, and we can even turn off these lights and they are still okay. One interesting aspect about our five senses is that it needs time when we process how we actually feel or whether we feel comfortable or not. You have to sit and work in a space for a certain period of time, or learn or live, until your brain tells you whether you live well, work well, or learn well. I would call that whether you dwell in there or not. And that could be a time of day or seasonally. And by doing so, we need to understand the relationship of that certain period of time that nature impacts us, and also how it interacts with the architecture that we're going to design when there was none. So for our case, we use simulation to help us with that. For example, we would like to introduce clear story opening for the classroom, but our clerestory are not facing north as usual, but we decided to face it courtyard-wise, curved to be underneath the tree shades. So we had to use simulation to test whether this is going to provide them with enough daylight without glare or not. And so is the case of the wind. We have to test to make sure that the wind is actually coming and the holes that we're punching here are enough to allow wind to get through. And with this seasonal change of nature, it can also be considered as a celebration, like this kindergarten, this school in Japan, where during rainy season, the courtyard playground changed to a water puddle. Or even for public spaces in this square in Rotterdam, where during the dry season, it's a public gathering space and also for some sports. But during the rainy season, it becomes a water reservoir and it helps to raise public awareness of living with nature, with water. So I wanted to ask you, what would you like the dwellers to experience and how? And to me, the important thing is about providing choices to the dwellers. They can choose their own connection with nature, and building skin plays a big part in this connection. Would you like to design the building skin to help them control how they would like to connect? Filter some senses or some nature elements? Semi-indoor outdoor space can also act as buffer from nature, or transitional space from inside this transitional space to outside to nature. And semi-indoor outdoor space to me is very important as it provides us with a more flexible use of space, unlike the indoor space. So what are the choices you can provide so that dwellers can choose how they would experience nature? And to me, there is a lot more from reconnecting with nature. If you look at this slide, Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley has defined 11 keys to living well, living a purposeful, contented life. And there are some of these keys that I would like to share with you. Awe. Awe is the feeling that we get in the presence of something that sort of challenges to the understanding of the world. And it makes you feel happier and more connected because you feel that you are a part of something bigger than yourself. But awe doesn't only happen when you have the skylight and you look at millions of stars up above. There can be awe in everyday life as well. We interviewed the teacher at this kindergarten, and they told us that they're very happy to see the kids felt this awe moment in their everyday life as they encounter tiny creatures like caterpillars, blue lizards, which comes and becomes sort of friends with them, or crows that are chasing them, or on a rare occasion, some snakes that came in. Well, no harm is done for the kids though. But this feeling helped the kids to be more connected to nature around them, and that's actually what we want for a learning environment. Mindfulness. Mindfulness is the awareness that arises when you direct your attention to your inner self, to the other people around you, or to the environment. It helps us to be aware of the present moment without judging it. And we talked with the owner of this house in Bangkok. After a year of occupancy, they told us that their favorite spot is to sit here on the west facing deck. It's the west facing, but it's a pocket courtyard, so it's shaded. And they said that once it became their favorite spot, they love to sit here every afternoon. And then they start to notice, once they are peacefully sitting and chatting, they start to notice what's happening around them at that very moment. They told me that they start to notice the pattern of the sun, where the sun is actually going, where it's going to set at different periods of the year. They start to notice the flowers that bloom during certain times of year. They start to notice the pattern of the shadows from the hanging greens on their terrace, and even tiny creatures, life that comes and goes. So I think this reflection helps you to be mindful of the surrounding environment and also helps you to feel connected to what's around you. And connecting with nature can also help us to feel calm. From the interview with the teachers and staffs at this Rain Tree Kindergarten, they told us that they felt that the students here, the general temperament are calm, and they thought that it's a result of reconnecting them to nature, and the children don't feel that they're blocked from nature. And if you look at this tiny narrow space at the back of the classroom here, it was intended to be sort of a back of house for teachers to store some things that they're not used. But it turns out that the teachers are using that space as a calm space for kids who had some meltdown. They would ask that kid to go out there. It's that tiny pocket space behind the classroom there, and calm themselves down. And they said that it worked very well. And this is something that surprised me. After we had a discussion with the teacher, we found out that after reluctantly using outdoor space because they're not used to, after 3 years of operation, they start to use the outdoor more. Children are more connected, not only during the curriculum that defines that it's going to be outdoor, but they devise a curriculum specifically that they could use the outdoor space regularly, and they use it for different occasions. And turns out that the children are very connected to the big trees. They felt that the trees are their friends. And one time when one of the trees got sick, they had to fence out a big area to allow for the time for that tree to recover. And they thought that these 1.5-year-old to 5-year-old kids would complain because they have less space to play. But instead, some kids went to them and asked whether the trees are okay and whether there is something they could do to help the trees. And I think I myself, I learned a lot from this project, that by reconnecting people with nature, there are unexplored potential as to what reconnecting people with nature can do. So my last question, in this book, Outside In, at the end, we answer to nature's calling. So I would like to ask you, as designers, how would you answer today? Thank you.